Lyonsville was in Tehama County, California. Once a thriving town of 1,000, with a major lumber operation that was once known as the largest in Northern California. Lyonsville had a giant lumber mill, 2 saloons, a general store, a schoolhouse for the many children, post office, community hall, many cabins and houses, a machine shop and blacksmith. Nothing remains today, except for these photos from the Miriam Library at CSU Chico, a giant pile of sawdust, and thousands of square nails, bolts, and railroad spikes. Let's start with the mill and the logging, then we will look at the people and faces of Lyonsville along with their wagons, pets, and leisure time activities. Stay until the end to see what Lyonsville looks like today. Enjoy. The Lyonsville Mill, also known as the Champion Mill, and by locals, the Champ, was constructed 3 times, and by 1885, employed 300 to 400 people. The Champion Mill was first built as a steam mill way back in 1876. Having 2 saws which would nominally cut 30,000 board feet of lumber per day. It operated until 1891, when it burned down. It was rebuilt and burned down again in 1907. Diamond Match Company bought the mill and it was rebuilt once again in 1908 for the 3rd and last time. The employees and their families lived here. The company furnished the lumber and the employees built their homes and cabins on their own time. These men were hard-working, rugged types and were very good about taking group photos. The Champion Crew in the 1890s. The Blacksmith Crew. The 1900 Donkey Steam Engine Crew. They had a double drum steam donkey also in 1900. Men of all ages worked and lived in Lyonsville. You will see many young boys in these photos that look completely exhausted. Exhausted, yet very proud looking in some of these. Here's a crew that had their dogs pose for a photograph too. I wonder what their names were. Just like the gold fields, there were men from different countries working here. Lyonsville had its own machine shop too. Here's a crew posing inside the shop. This is the Champion Crew in 1890. There were many crews of men that worked in this enormous operation. This is the Stacking Crew. A boiler crew, keeping those boilers packed with firewood. And a death-defying, high-wire, tree-topping crew. These men made almost everything they had up there on site. And for the things they couldn't make themselves, they brought it in from Red Bluff using horses and wagons. The sugar pine trees were cut down by hand. some were 9 feet in diameter. Again, the loggers looking very pleased with themselves and their epic logging accomplishments. The men would set up small camps to harvest new areas, then move on to the next. They used the steam donkey engines to pull logs to a staging area with a cable. Then a horse would drag the cable back up to the fallen trees and start again. Look at the size of these logs. A ton of hard work for sure. This is the 1905 Donkey Crew, as they were called. On top of logging huge trees, they had to also keep up with firewood to feed the steam donkeys. They also used teams of horses and oxen to pull logs. They created a log chute to run the logs along for faster movement, followed by building a water-filled flume and a railroad. The flume went all the way from Lyonsville to Red Bluff. At the end of the line, men would pull the lumber planks from the water and start stacking. This was eventually replaced by a power-driven chain that would save these men from back-breaking labor. Some would ride the flume on boards for 35 miles to Red Bluff. The original flume had been built by the people who first settled in Lyonsville to divert water from Antelope Creek to their homes. The flume pretty much followed an old Yawnee Native American foot trail between Lassen and Antelope Creek called Waganupa. A narrow-gauge railroad was built to move the logs to the mill with many trestles, as lumber to build them was no issue. "12 cars, holding only 12 logs, was not an uncommon scene. The Uncle Sam steam locomotive was destroyed in the Champion Mill fire and was rebuilt and used in the Kimshu logging operations later. On special holidays, like the 4th of July, the townspeople would use the train and decorate it for passengers to go to picnics and enjoy a train ride through the area. Here is a view of the designated picnic and celebration area the townsfolk would use during the nice weather in spring, summer, and fall. And they would use the community hall in town during inclement weather. This was Aunt Alice's boarding house. You can see Alice and some of her boarders on the steps. Alice Olson operated boarding houses in and around Lyonsville for 30 years. Lyonsville also had a doctor's office, where Dr. Connell practiced medicine for the work crews and townsfolk. In this photo, a curious medicine, looks like booze, is being dispensed. Alice and Adolph Olson with baby Edward in 1888. While living in Lyonsville, Adolph was a sawyer for 30 years, while Alice ran the boarding house. This is the Brazel and Freeman families. The Brazel family from left to right: Grace, Mrs. Brazel, Bruce, Minnie and Lulu. Photo taken in 1891. Not sure why the young man in the rear isn't noted. Here is Belle Shelton with her mother, Letha Jane Shelton, in 1900. The Bell Mill was named for the daughter. Edward Shelton, husband and father, was the boss man at Shelton's Camp that was named after him, along with Shelton's Ridge. People had pretty much normal, turn-of-the-century lives here in Lyonsville. Ice was kept in the ice house behind this group of happy-looking residents. The Gibson family, in front of their house, with their dog. 1890. People were happy to get their photos taken in Lyonsville, maybe the most smiles I've seen in photos from this era. Grandpa Black in front of his cabin in 1917. Alice Olson riding side saddle and son Eddie on horses in 1894. The first schoolhouse in Lyonsville was built in 1887. Many children were schooled and played here over the years. Note how well dressed these children are. Some even smiling. Teacher Sally Owens pictured here with a boys' baseball team and her class in 1910. The hard-working people of Lyonsville worked hard and played hard. Here is a photo of them in the grandstands, enjoying a baseball game. Just like today, they enjoyed cruising around on their days off, enjoying the scenery with friends and family. This is the Lyonsville General Store. They had everything they needed in this rugged logging and sawmill town. They even had a ladies' club. It was quite civilized. Behind this crew of loggers you can see just how many trees they cut down. From topping the trees to removing the bark all by hand, this was truly amazing for the time in Northern California, while most were either still looking for gold or farming. This lumber would be used in the construction of NorCal for decades. Not only did they log the forests, but they hand-built all of the infrastructure needed for it, along with a whole town. After the Diamond Match Company bought the mill, they moved their interests to Sterling City above Paradise and Magalia, leaving Lyonsville practically empty. Most of the people moved away, and after these last few photos of Lyonsville, I will show you what it looks like today. We are lucky to have these photos saved in the archives, or people may not have known about this wonderful and industrious town called Lyonsville. Using Google Maps, you can search Lyonsville. There isn't much here left to see. I found one house and a couple old barns. Look at all of the logging that still goes on up there today. I enjoyed hammering out this video for you all to enjoy. Please subscribe if you are interested in Northern California's amazing history.